Okay, so February, so just a few months prior to that initial May incident where she disappeared.
Yes,
Right?
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So you have a kidney transplant in February. What does the aftercare look like, and how long did it take you to be on your feet?
Um, well, in some ways, to be honest, I'm still recovering. There's things that happen like infections that can last for even a couple years afterwards. But the aftercare was that I was on a lot of immunosuppressant drugs, and I was also on very strong doses of steroids. When prior to the transplant and even immediately after, when they were explaining that they were giving these steroids to me, they said, some people, they take these and they're like euphoric, they're on the top of the world. And other people, they get angry. We've had people, throw their food off of their tray in the hospital because these steroids are really powerful drugs. And, that goes to what I was explaining about that I did have anger problems. I was on very high doses of steroids, and that's kind of an unfortunate side effect of them that I needed to stay alive and to keep that transplanted kidney healthy. And since that time, my dosage has been lowered. Things have settled down a lot, and I've also, been in therapy to try and correct, any of the anger that was lasting, but largely it's kind of gone away with not having to take the doses. The early days, the early months of having a kidney transplant are really tumultuous. You have to go to the transplant center twice a week, and every time you go, they're making adjustments to your medications. They're changing something, and so one week you may feel great, and then the next week you feel awful, and the next week you're angry. It's a difficult process.
So in February,
Um, I was only there for a few days, actually. I made a really quick recovery. They kind of base it on how quickly you can get up and walk on your own, and I was able to do that pretty quickly, which was good. So, but it takes many months to be able to where you can like get up on your own, even if you can walk, or to lift things, to be self-sufficient. For me personally, it took probably about 3 months to get there.
so right around the time that interesting, and you acknowledge that you had anger issues. It may be the steroids. I know, there is documented cases of steroids obviously causing anger issues with people.
Yeah.
Um, so what caused your kidney illness? I'm so sorry if that's personal and you don't have to answer that, but why did you need a transplant?
I had chronic kidney disease. So I had kidney disease from I found out about it from the time that Victoria and I were dating. The doctors aren't exactly sure because I don't have diabetes or any of the other kind of comorbidities. And so their best guess is that at some point I had an infection that made its way into my kidneys and then caused them to, shut down over time.
Well, the therapy, do you feel like that you and her made any headway during therapy, or do you feel like you made any progress with that?
So sometimes, I worried that she wasn't as committed to it. Um, but I felt like we're doing a lot better. That's why I said when July happened, it was a shock. And from May to July, I felt really quite safe because I thought, well, we have this therapist that we're going to be able to talk these problems out with and, explain situations and it would be better.
Back to July, you mentioned that you decided to contact an attorney. At this point, you don't want her in trouble, I believe is what you're saying. So what did you want to accomplish by contacting the attorney?
I just wanted to see my daughters again. That was it. My intention was not to take them away from her. My intention was not to have the divorce that eventually went through. I wanted to see my daughters again. I wanted to understand what was happening. And I was advised by him that the best way to do that was to get a temporary restraining order, which basically, in this instance, was that she would need to bring the children back to the marital home and that she would not be allowed to take them out of the state and that we would have a hearing, a supplemental hearing to that order later on in which everybody could, say their piece. and they would make decisions. I later had to get divorced as part of the custody part, so that the police's involvement could become more.
You obviously made the police report like your attorneys advised, and you had some court hearings. And so you were granted a temporary restraining order as well as a divorce, but no
Yes,
full custody.
yes.
How is that possible if she didn't go to court? How
At the very first restraining order hearing, her attorney appeared and he stood up at the beginning of the hearing and he said, "I've just been fired. I need to recuse myself from this hearing." And that was it. That was the extent of contact. And so the commissioner over the hearing, extended the temporary restraining order, and then the next step was to get an injunction, which involved a divorce and a custody proceeding. And so the judge who heard that case saw sufficient evidence that the custody needed to, go to me, and that they would maintain the injunction against her, saying, "You cannot leave the state of Utah. You need to return the children to their custodial home."
okay. And then at some point in October, it looks like she called the police. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was 3 or 4 days before one of those hearings, before one of the restraining order hearings that she was ordered to attend.
Okay. And you did send that to me. And I'm going to go ahead and play it now. And just so the audience knows, this was originally over 20 minutes. There was a lot of extended hold time, as well as redactions of people's, names and addresses, which is normal. So it's edited down significantly for the sake of brevity. So let's go ahead and play that now.
Dispatch. Hi, I just need to make a report, pretty please.